The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty compound as Maya Singh checked her weapon for the third time. At 28, she had already earned a reputation among her unit as someone who never missed her target. The remote training facility in Rajasthan buzzed with activity as elite commandos from different branches prepared for what their instructors called the ultimate combat assessment. Maya wiped sweat from her forehead, adjusting the tactical vest that felt heavier than usual in the desert heat. She had been looking forward to this evaluation for months. Years of rigorous training, countless hours on the shooting range, and her exceptional performance in previous exercises had earned her a spot among the top candidates. This assessment would determine who would join the most elite counterterrorism unit in the country. The other participants eyed her with a mixture of respect and skepticism. Being one of only 3 women in a group of 45 commandos meant she constantly had to prove herself. She had grown accustomed to the whispers and sideways glances, but today felt different. Today, she would show them exactly what she was, capable of. Colonel Rathore, the evaluation commander, gathered the group near the central briefing area. His weathered face showed no emotion as he explained the rules. Each candidate would face a series of increasingly difficult scenarios designed to test their combat skills, decision-making ability, and mental toughness under extreme pressure. The scenarios would be realistic, using advanced simulation technology and live ammunition in controlled environments. Maya listened intently as the colonel outlined the first phase. Candidates would navigate through a mock urban environment, neutralizing targets while protecting civilians. Standard operating procedures applied, but creativity and adaptability would be rewarded. The colonel's eyes briefly met Maya's as he emphasized that this was not just about marksmanship, but about thinking like a true warrior. As the briefing concluded, Maya felt a familiar calm settle over her. This was what she had trained for her entire adult life. Growing up in a military family, she had always dreamed of serving in the most challenging roles possible. Her father, a retired Army officer, had initially opposed her decision to join the armed forces, but her determination and exceptional abilities had eventually won his support. The other candidates began moving toward their assigned starting positions. Maya noticed how some of them seemed nervous, checking and rechecking their equipment. She understood their anxiety. This evaluation could make or break their careers. Success meant joining an elite unit with prestige and challenging missions. Failure meant returning to regular duties with the knowledge that they had fallen short when it mattered most. Maya's confidence came from years of preparation. She had trained in various combat disciplines, studying not just marksmanship but also hand-to-hand combat, tactical strategy, and psychological warfare. Her instructors had often commented on her natural instincts and ability to remain calm under pressure. She had a gift for reading situations quickly and making split-second decisions that often proved correct. The training facility's mock urban environment stretched before them like a maze of concrete buildings and narrow alleyways. Somewhere within this labyrinth, targets waited alongside civilian mannequins that would cost valuable points if accidentally engaged. Maya studied the layout one final time, mentally mapping potential routes and identifying likely ambush points. As she prepared to enter the course, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought her here. Years of proving herself in a male-dominated field, countless hours of training that pushed her physical and mental limits, and the unwavering belief that she belonged among the elite. Her family's military tradition weighed on her shoulders, but it also provided strength and motivation. The signal to begin echoed across the compound. Maya took a deep breath, checked her weapon one last time, and stepped into the urban maze. She had no idea that in just a few hours, everything she thought she knew about combat would be tested in ways she could never have imagined. The reputation she had built over years of service was about to be put to the ultimate test, and the outcome would surprise everyone present, including herself. Maya moved through the first phase of the urban course with practiced precision. Her movements were fluid and calculated as she cleared each room methodically. The sound of her boots on concrete echoed softly as she approached corners with her weapon ready. Within minutes, she had successfully neutralized 6 targets while avoiding 3 civilian mannequins strategically placed to test judgment under pressure. The observers watching from elevated positions murmured appreciatively as Maya demonstrated textbook tactical movement. She used cover effectively, maintained proper spacing, and showed excellent trigger discipline. Her shots were accurate and decisive, each one finding its mark with minimal ammunition expenditure. Other candidates were still struggling through the initial obstacles when Maya completed the urban phase 15 minutes ahead of schedule. Colonel Rathor made notes on his evaluation sheet, nodding slightly as Maya exited the course. Her performance had been flawless, exactly what they expected from someone of her caliber. The next phase would test her abilities in a different environment, one that would challenge her adaptability and quick thinking skills. The second evaluation took place in a simulated aircraft hijacking scenario. Maya was briefed on the situation while other candidates completed their urban phase. Terrorists had taken control of a commercial aircraft with civilian hostages aboard. Her mission was to neutralize the threats while ensuring maximum civilian safety. The mock aircraft interior was incredibly realistic, complete with airplane seats, narrow aisles, and limited visibility. Maya studied the aircraft layout carefully, identifying potential advantages and disadvantages of the confined space. The narrow aisles would limit movement but could also provide cover. She would need to be extremely careful with her shots to avoid hitting innocent civilians. This scenario demanded not just marksmanship but also nerves of steel and perfect judgment. As she prepared to enter the aircraft, Maya noticed the evaluators positioning themselves for optimal observation. Their intense focus told her this phase was particularly important. She had heard rumors that many promising candidates had failed at this stage due to the psychological pressure of operating in such close quarters with civilian lives at stake. The briefing indicated that 4 armed terrorists were positioned throughout the aircraft. Intelligence suggested they were highly trained and would not hesitate to harm hostages if they detected any rescue attempt. Maya would have to move quietly, strike quickly, and maintain complete situational awareness throughout the operation. Maya entered through the rear of the aircraft, immediately noting the dim lighting and cramped conditions. The silence was broken only by recorded sounds of frightened passengers whispering and crying. The psychological aspect of the simulation was incredibly realistic, designed to create the same stress levels as an actual hostage situation. She moved forward slowly, using the seat backs for cover while scanning for her first target. The terrorist. Mannequins were positioned to create maximum difficulty, requiring precise shots from awkward angles. Maya's training kicked in as she controlled her breathing and focused entirely on the mission at hand. Her first target appeared near the middle of the aircraft, positioned to threaten multiple civilian hostages. Maya took careful aim, accounting for the narrow shooting lane and the risk to innocent lives. Her shot was perfect, striking the target in the center mass while avoiding any collateral damage to the surrounding area. The second target proved more challenging, positioned in a way that required Maya to expose herself to potential return fire. She used a passenger seat as a shooting rest, steadying her weapon for the difficult angle shot. Again, her marksmanship proved flawless, neutralizing the threat without endangering any civilians. As Maya advanced toward the front of the aircraft, she could sense the observers' growing interest in her performance. Her movements remained confident and controlled despite the increasing pressure. She had successfully adapted her tactics to the confined environment while maintaining the same high standards of accuracy and safety. The third target waited near the cockpit area, positioned to create maximum difficulty for the approaching candidate. Maya paused to assess the situation, noting the limited cover options and the increased risk of civilian casualties in this section. Her decision-making process was quick but thorough, considering multiple approaches before selecting the optimal solution. Her reputation for excellence was being reinforced with each successful engagement. The other candidates and evaluators were witnessing a masterclass in tactical operations, though none of them realized that Maya's greatest test still lay ahead. Maya completed the aircraft scenario with remarkable efficiency, neutralizing all 4 targets without a single civilian casualty. As she exited the mock aircraft, she could see the impressed expressions on the faces of her fellow candidates. Colonel Rathor's evaluation sheet was filled with positive marks, and whispered conversations among the observers suggested she was setting a new standard for the assessment. The third phase presented an entirely different challenge. Maya was led to what appeared to be a simple briefing room where she expected to receive instructions for the next scenario. Instead, she found herself face to face with a panel of senior officers she had never seen before. Their stern expressions and formal posture immediately put her on alert. Lieutenant General Sharma, whom Maya recognized from military publications, sat at the center of the panel. His reputation for being both brilliant and ruthless was well known throughout the armed forces. The other officers flanking him wore no name tags and displayed minimal insignia, suggesting they represented intelligence agencies or special operations divisions. The general's voice was calm, but carried an unmistakable authority as he began speaking. Maya was being accused of security violations that allegedly occurred during her previous assignments. Documents were placed before her showing communications and activities that she recognized, but which were now being interpreted in a completely different light than their original context. Maya felt her heart rate increase as she realized this was not another simulation. The accusations were serious enough to end her career and potentially result in criminal charges. The evidence presented seemed convincing, though she knew the activities in question had been legitimate parts of her assigned duties. Someone had carefully constructed a case that made her actions appear suspicious and potentially treasonous. The interrogation continued for over an hour, with each officer taking turns presenting evidence and asking pointed questions about her conduct, associations, and motivations. Maya maintained her composure while defending herself, but she could sense that her explanations were being met with skepticism and predetermined conclusions. As the questioning intensified, Maya began to understand that this was more than just a security investigation. The timing, the setting, and the presence of unknown officers suggested this was part of the evaluation itself. However, the accusations felt too real and detailed to be merely a test scenario. The documents contained information that only someone with access to classified files could have obtained. The pressure mounted as General Sharma produced what appeared to be surveillance footage showing Maya in locations she had never visited, meeting with individuals she had never encountered. The technology was sophisticated enough that even she began to doubt her own memories for brief moments. The psychological warfare was expertly crafted to break down her confidence and force admissions of guilt. Maya's military training helped her recognize the interrogation techniques being employed, but knowing the methods did not make them less effective. Sleep deprivation, constant questioning, and the presentation of fabricated evidence were designed to create confusion and compliance. She forced herself to remain focused on the facts she knew to be true. During a brief break in the UCO questioning, Maya was left alone in the room. She used this time to analyze the situation logically. The elaborate setup, the presence of multiple agencies, and the sophisticated evidence suggested significant resources were being devoted to this operation. Either she was facing a genuine security investigation of massive proportions, or this was the most complex evaluation scenario ever devised. When the interrogation resumed, Maya made a crucial decision. Instead of continuing to defend herself reactively, she began to challenge the evidence being presented. She pointed out inconsistencies in the timeline, questioned the authenticity of certain documents, and demanded to know why standard procedures were not being followed, if this was a legitimate investigation. Her change in approach seemed to surprise the interrogators. General Sharma leaned forward, studying her more intently as she systematically addressed each accusation with logical counter-arguments. Maya realized that her ability to maintain clear thinking under extreme psychological pressure was itself being evaluated. The final phase of the interrogation involved the presentation of an ultimatum. Maya was told that cooperation and admission of wrongdoing would result in leniency, while continued denial would lead to severe consequences. The officers painted a picture of her future that involved court-martial, imprisonment, and the destruction of everything she had worked to achieve. Maya took a long moment to consider her response. She could sense that this was the critical decision point, the moment that would determine not just the outcome of this evaluation, but potentially the direction of her entire career. The room fell silent as everyone waited for her answer, and Maya realized that sometimes the greatest test of character comes not from physical challenges, but from moral ones. Maya looked directly at General Sharma and spoke with unwavering conviction. She refused to admit to crimes she had not committed, regardless of the consequences they threatened. Her voice remained steady as she stated that her service record spoke for itself, and she would rather face whatever punishment they deemed appropriate than compromise her integrity by confessing to fabricated charges. The room fell silent for several long moments. Then, unexpectedly, General Sharma smiled for the first time since the interrogation began. The other officers relaxed their stern postures, and Maya realized that her instinct had been correct. This elaborate psychological operation was indeed part of the evaluation process, designed to test her moral courage and resistance to coercion under extreme pressure. Colonel Rathore entered the room and explained that Maya had just completed the most challenging phase of the assessment. The fabricated evidence, surveillance footage, and accusations were all sophisticated tests designed to evaluate her psychological resilience and ethical foundation. Many candidates had failed this phase by either breaking under pressure or compromising their principles to avoid threatened consequences. Maya felt a mixture of relief and anger at having been subjected to such an intense deception. However, she also understood the necessity of testing candidates who would potentially operate in situations where they might face actual interrogation, blackmail, or psychological manipulation by enemy forces. The evaluation was designed to ensure that only individuals with unshakable moral foundations would be selected for the elite unit. As Maya was escorted to a rest area to recover from the psychological ordeal, she reflected on how the day had challenged her in ways she had never anticipated. The physical and tactical assessments had tested her combat skills, but the interrogation had probed much deeper into her character and values. She realized that true elite warriors needed more than just tactical proficiency. The final phase of the evaluation was announced as Maya rejoined the remaining candidates. Only 12 of the original 45 remained, and their faces showed the strain of the day's challenges. The final test would be a comprehensive combat scenario that would incorporate elements from all the previous phases, while adding new complications and time pressure. Maya was informed that her weapon would be confiscated for the final scenario. This announcement sent shockwaves through the remaining candidates, as none of them had anticipated facing a combat situation while unarmed. The rationale provided was that elite operatives must be prepared to continue their mission, even when deprived of their primary weapons. The scenario briefing revealed that 4 highly trained commandos from a rival unit would act as hostile forces in a complex facility. These were not mannequins or simulation targets, but actual combat specialists who had volunteered to play the role of adversaries. The candidates would face real opponents using non-lethal but painful training ammunition designed to simulate actual combat conditions. Maya studied the facility layout while mentally preparing for the most challenging combat scenario of her career. The building was a multi-level structure with numerous rooms, corridors, and potential hiding spots. Intelligence indicated that the 4 hostile commandos were positioned strategically throughout the facility, each armed with training weapons and protective gear. The mission objective was simple but extremely difficult: neutralize all 4 hostile forces within a strict time limit while avoiding capture or incapacitation. Candidates would be evaluated on their creativity, tactical, thinking, physical capabilities, and ability to adapt when facing overwhelming odds. The scenario was designed to push every participant beyond their comfort zone. As Maya prepared to enter the facility, she realized that everything she had learned during her military career would be put to the ultimate test. Without her weapon, she would need to rely on hand-to-hand combat skills, environmental awareness, and strategic thinking. The 4 commandos waiting inside were experienced fighters who would show no mercy, despite the training nature of the exercise. The facility was dimly lit, with emergency lighting providing just enough illumination to navigate safely. Maya could hear movement in the upper levels, indicating that the hostile forces were already positioning themselves for the engagement. She had studied their likely deployment patterns during the briefing, but she knew they would adapt their positions once the scenario began. Maya entered the building through the designated entry point, immediately seeking cover behind a concrete pillar. Her first priority was to locate and acquire any available weapons or tools that might give her an advantage against her armed opponents. The facility had been prepared with various items that could potentially be used as improvised weapons or tactical aids. Moving silently through the ground floor, Maya began to form a mental picture of the building's layout and the likely positions of her adversaries. She could hear subtle sounds from different areas of the facility, suggesting that the 4 commandos were spread throughout the structure to create maximum coverage and mutual support. The countdown timer on her mission briefing showed that she had less than 60 minutes to complete the objective. Maya knew that direct confrontation would likely result in her quick defeat, given that she was outnumbered 4-1 and outgunned. She would need to use strategy, surprise, and the environment itself to level the playing field. Maya discovered a maintenance closet containing various tools and supplies that could be adapted for tactical use. She quickly selected items that could serve as improvised weapons or distractions, including rope, a heavy wrench, and several smoke grenades left intentionally for the candidates to find. Her military engineering background helped her immediately see the potential applications of each item. Working swiftly but quietly, Maya rigged several simple traps using the available materials. She understood that the 4 commandos would expect a direct assault or attempt at stealth infiltration. Instead, she would turn the facility itself into a weapon, using environmental advantages and psychological warfare to even the odds against her heavily armed opponents. Her first target was a commando stationed on the 2nd floor, who she had identified through careful observation of shadow movements and reflected light patterns. Maya used the building's ventilation system to approach his position from an unexpected angle. The narrow air ducts were uncomfortable, but provided perfect concealment as she maneuvered above her target. Maya positioned herself directly over the unsuspecting commando and waited for the perfect moment to strike. When he moved beneath a ceiling access panel, she dropped silently behind him. Her attack was swift and precise, using techniques from her close-quarters combat training to disable him before he could raise an alarm or fire his weapon. The first hostile force was neutralized within 3 minutes of her entry into the facility. She quickly stripped the unconscious commando of his protective gear and training weapon, finally arming herself for the confrontations ahead. However, Maya realized that the other 3 commandos would soon notice their colleague's absence and adjust their tactics accordingly. She had perhaps 10 minutes before they would begin actively searching for her. Moving to the 3rd floor, Maya encountered her second opponent in a narrow corridor where his training weapon gave him a significant advantage. However, Maya had anticipated the situation and had prepared accordingly. She used one of her improvised smoke grenades to create concealment, then employed the confined space to her advantage by engaging in close-quarters combat, where his longer weapon became a liability. The 2nd commando was more alert than the 1st and put up considerable resistance. Maya's hand-to-hand combat skills were tested to their limits as she fought against a skilled and determined opponent. The engagement lasted nearly 2 minutes before Maya successfully disabled him, but not before he managed to fire several training rounds that alerted the remaining 2 commandos to her presence. Now facing opponents who were actively hunting her, Maya realized that stealth was no longer a viable option. The remaining 2 commandos would be coordinating their search and using tactical communication to maintain contact with each other. Maya needed to prevent them from working together while still managing to engage them individually. She decided to use the building's fire suppression system to create chaos and confusion. Maya activated the sprinkler system throughout the facility, reducing visibility and creating noise that would mask her movements. The flooding water also made the floor slippery, potentially creating opportunities for her to gain advantages during physical confrontations. The 3rd commando attempted to flush Maya out of her position by laying down suppressive fire in the corridors where he suspected she might be hiding. However, Maya had positioned herself in an unexpected location, using the building's structural elements to remain concealed while observing his tactics. She waited patiently for him to expose himself during his aggressive advance. When the opportunity presented itself, Maya struck with devastating effectiveness. She had learned from her previous encounters and adapted her approach to account for the increased alertness of her remaining opponents. The 3rd commando was neutralized through a combination of tactical maneuvering and superior close-quarters combat techniques. The final commando proved to be the most challenging opponent Maya had faced during the entire evaluation. He had observed the fate of his 3 colleagues and adapted his tactics to avoid their mistakes. Instead of actively hunting for Maya, he had chosen a defensive position that provided excellent cover while controlling access to multiple areas of the facility. Maya realized that a direct assault against this well-positioned opponent would likely result in her defeat. The final commando had chosen his position expertly, making use of natural cover while maintaining clear fields of fire. Maya would need to find a way to force him out of his advantageous position or find an approach that he had not anticipated. Time was becoming a critical factor as Maya had already used 47 minutes of her allocated hour. She needed to neutralize this final opponent quickly while avoiding the mistakes that could cost her the entire evaluation. Everything she had accomplished during the day would be meaningless if she failed to complete this final challenge successfully. Maya studied the final commando's position and realized that his greatest strength was also his weakness. His defensive position provided excellent protection, but it also limited his mobility and situational awareness of areas outside his immediate field of view. Maya began formulating a plan that would exploit this limitation while using the building's infrastructure to her advantage. She quietly made her way to the building's electrical panel and began systematically shutting down power to different sections of the facility. By creating a pattern of darkness that gradually closed in on the final commando's position, Maya forced him to question whether she was trying to approach under cover of darkness, or if she was attempting to drive him out of his stronghold. The psychological pressure of being the last defender while surrounded by darkness began to affect the final commando's decision-making. Maya could observe his increasing agitation through small movements and changes in his defensive posture. She continued to manipulate the environment, creating sounds and movements that suggested multiple possible approaches to keep him guessing about her actual location. When Maya finally made her move, it came from a direction that the commando had not anticipated. Using a combination of rope work and structural climbing techniques, she approached his position from above through a skylight that provided access to the building's roof. The commando had focused his attention on ground-level approaches and had not considered the possibility of a vertical assault. Maya's final attack was executed with the precision and timing that had characterized her entire performance throughout the evaluation. She descended rapidly through the skylight, landing behind the final commando's defensive position before he could react to the unexpected threat. Her training in close-quarters combat allowed her to disable him quickly and efficiently, completing the scenario with less than 2 minutes remaining on the countdown timer. As the facility's lights were restored and evaluation officials entered to check on all participants, Maya stood among the 4 disabled commandos she had defeated in what observers would later describe as one of the most impressive individual combat performances in the facility's history. The fact that she had accomplished this feat while initially unarmed made her achievement even more remarkable. Colonel Rathore and General Sharma approached Maya with expressions that mixed professional admiration with genuine surprise. They had designed the final scenario to be nearly impossible, expecting that most candidates would fail to neutralize all 4 opponents within the time limit. Maya had not only succeeded, but had done so with a methodical approach that demonstrated tactical brilliance and psychological warfare skills. The debriefing revealed that Maya had been monitored throughout the entire final scenario by multiple cameras and evaluation specialists. Her improvisations, tactical decisions, and adaptation to changing circumstances had provided valuable insights into her capabilities under extreme pressure. The 4 commandos she had defeated were themselves experienced special operations personnel who rarely lost in training scenarios. Maya learned that her performance had exceeded all expectations and established new benchmarks for the evaluation program. Her ability to remain calm under psychological pressure during the interrogation phase, combined with her tactical excellence in the final combat scenario, had demonstrated the complete skill set required for the most elite operations. As the day concluded, Maya reflected on how the evaluation had tested every aspect of her military training and personal character. She had faced challenges that pushed her physical capabilities, tactical knowledge, psychological resilience, and moral foundation The experience had shown her that true elite warriors needed more than just combat skills. They required adaptability, creativity, and unshakable principles. The results of Maya's evaluation would soon lead to opportunities that she had never imagined. Her performance had caught the attention of intelligence agencies and special operations units that operated at the highest levels of national security. The reputation she had built through years of dedicated service was now enhanced by a legendary evaluation performance that would be discussed in military circles for years to come. Standing in the desert compound as the sun set over Rajasthan, Maya understood that this day had changed the trajectory of her career forever. She had proven not only to others but also to herself that she possessed the rare combination of skills, character, and determination required to operate at the absolute pinnacle of military service. The girl who had once dreamed of serving her country had become a warrior whose capabilities exceeded even her own expectations.